I'm the Simple Car Guy, and this is my 13-year-old BMW 335, and in my opinion, it's one of the best designed cars ever made. It's been turning heads for over 2 decades now, and it's loved by many. I've had 2 of them over the last 8 years, and today I will show you 5 things that I really love about this iconic machine, and 5 things that have been very frustrating over the years. Woo! Let's go! The first thing that I love about this car has to be the sleek design. It's simple, it still looks cool, and let's not forget that this body style was designed almost 2 decades ago. Of course, it might be that I was a teenager when this car came out, but I just love how cool and still to this day modern and stylish this car looks. There is no controversy about it. It's a timeless design. This is the M Sport version of the coupe, and even so, it does not look overly aggressive, just sophisticated with its aerodynamic curves. Being a coupe, you would think that it's very limited on space, but in fact, it's fairly roomy for what it is, with a huge trunk space to fit whatever you would like. As an example, you can easily take 3 people skiing in this car, something I've done at least a few times in the past. There is plenty to love about this interior design as well. Besides the 60-40 split that makes it much more usable, one of my favorites is the black headliner and the overall aesthetic of the interior. And of course, this great quality leather. Just look how nice it still looks 13 years later. I also love the thick M Sport steering wheel and the knee support on both the driver and the passenger sport seats. Not everything is perfect on this car though, which brings me to the first flaw. As the saying goes, every rose has its thorn, and one that has been poking me the most over the years is the seat extender. If you're not familiar, these are the little extenders that hand you the seat belt so it's a little bit easier to reach. This car has super wide doors, so it is quite a distance to reach especially if your seat's moved up just a little bit higher. The problem is that these are broken all the time, and I've replaced them probably 4 or 5 times now. And after a while, it gets really annoying because they keep breaking, so I have completely disabled the driver's side extender through coating. It's not nearly as convenient now, but at least it doesn't fall off as it's going towards me each time. The cup holders are also always broken on these cars, but at least these are very cheap and easy to replace. Of course, if you want to be very picky, I have to admit that the E92's coupe design sacrifices a bit of rear passenger comfort for its sporty appeal, so it's not a great passenger car if you sit in the back, but honestly, who cares? Going back outside, there isn't much I can fault here, as there are no fake vents or grills or random reflectors, well, except for that one, but that's required by law, and the design language is all there. Well, except maybe for this area right here, where it looks kind of messy with all of the body parts kind of coming together to a not so perfect corner. It feels like they designed all these parts and then kind of joined it here together without really thinking about it. I also wish the coupe would have no B-pillar like the convertible or the Z4. So if this B-pillar would be gone, I think it would look much, much better, but that's just my preference. Back to the things I love. At number 2, it's the heart of the beast, the N54 twin turbocharged, which was in the early cars, or this N55 twin scroll turbocharged inline 6 engine. People may argue about which one is better, but I've owned both versions of the car, and as far as driving, there is almost no difference. Of course, the N54 is more customizable and tunable, but the N55 engine is more reliable if left alone. Either way, the 300 horsepower from either of these engines delivers an exhilarating driving experience with a great soundtrack to follow. It's even more enjoyable for me as I've rebuilt this one in my garage a couple of years ago. You can check out a 30-minute video from start to finish right here. Which nicely brings us to the biggest negative on this car, the elephant in the room, maintenance costs. When I owned a 2008 version E92 back in the day, I lived in the city and I couldn't do any of my own maintenance. That meant that every visit to the dealer or an independent shop would always end up costing me a lot of money. I remember paying over $1,600 for a gasket replacement that was causing an oil leak and $1,200 for a water pump. Owning a BMW comes with a premium, and I learned that very quickly back then. Of course, the E92 chassis with the newer N55 engine is no exception, so be prepared for potentially higher costs when it comes to regular maintenance and repairs unless you can do it yourself, especially as all of these cars are over a decade old now. I just hope that most will go through enthusiasts and not someone that will abuse them. That's where the love and hate relationship comes in. You love the car for so many reasons, but the cost of ownership can be on the higher side. Anything from rough idling and stalling caused by the high pressure fuel pump to engine overheating from failed water pump, which will fail because it's made out of plastic, to potential turbo issues, especially in those older N54 versions of the car. Electrical groundlings that are hard to track down are not uncommon either, and a good reminder that the E92 platform isn't immune to technical hiccups, just like any other car, except it's a lot more expensive to fix if you don't do any of the work yourself. So keeping this beast in tip-top shape might require deeper pockets. Luckily, the maintenance worry quickly went away when I drove this car for the first time almost a decade ago. And to this day, whenever I get in it and punch it like you're supposed to, it puts a smile on my face every single time. I mean, this car is just so much fun to drive. You can drop down the gear and then we'll give you that much more torque. You jump right into the power band and the car feels amazing. The well-balanced chassis, the really nicely weighted hydraulic steering, and especially the smooth power delivery. You just don't get that on a lot of other cars. So the value for money that you get with this driving experience, especially today, since these cars are so cheap nowadays, is just staggering. And of course, if you're worried that this might be a little too difficult to live on a daily basis, since the steering wheel is a bit harder to turn at lower speeds, well, I had this car for 4 years as a daily driver and I've had zero issues. You really get used to it, and then you just love the precision that you get and the feedback from the steering wheel that you get when you drive this car. And I've also taken it on many 300-400 mile road trips without any issues. Once you're on the highway, it basically feels like a normal steering column, but when you go slowly, oh, it's just a pleasure to drive. Like especially these little turns and twisties. Oh, you punch it in and you know exactly where the car is. Anyway, whether you're tackling curves or cruising down the highway, the classic offering of perfect blend of comfort and sportiness feels like an extension of yourself and a driving experience that's hard to match, especially on newer cars. Woo! Hey, let's go. Something that I wish was more like the newer cars is the transmission. That's the only disappointing part of owning an E92 non-DCT car. I know some of you will say that it's just my car, but my previous 335 was exactly the same. Whenever these cars are cold, gear changes feel very sluggish and it will jerk if you try to accelerate quickly. Of course, once it warms up and goes through all of the gears, it gets much better once the oil is warmed up, but lots of times it still would lurch while upshifting at lower speeds. Another downfall that comes stuck on this car is the run-flat tires. While they're very convenient, they give a harsher ride and are more expensive to replace. I would definitely recommend getting a better set of tires and wheels like I have done right here, and maybe possibly also upgrade your AAA subscription for those times a portable air pump won't save you. Which brings me nicely to my fourth point and why I still love this old BMW and why it's still so popular with the crowd. There are a million different mods available for this vehicle. If you don't like something about this car, there's a good chance you can upgrade it. Anything from intake to exhaust, to turbos, to forged internals, to performance chips, to anything you like. everything is available for this car since it's so popular. This makes this car fun to own. If you're an enthusiast, you always have something you can work on, something you can modify, something you can improve, something you can add. And of course, I've done some of these in this car as well. The car has a sporty exhaust system, better intake, bigger intercooler, metal intake pipes, and much more. Not only are there a million performance mods, but you can also go crazy with the exterior body parts or even modernize it by installing wireless CarPlay and Android Auto like I've done on my car. The amount of wheels that fit this chassis is also staggering, and there will be something you like. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that you can go as wild and crazy as you like or as mild as you want. I mean, look at this car. This is very understated, very subtle, but there's definitely a lot of modification from stock. There's also plenty of examples of people going crazy, getting 1500 horsepower from these N54 engines, or crazy styling, or very subtle sleeper mods. Lots of less crazy stuff is also not very expensive and an easy way of getting into a large community of like-minded individuals that share the love for this iconic machine. With that comes one of the biggest negatives: public perception. Unfortunately, there are plenty of guys giving us bad reputation among the general public. As this generation approaches 20 years, it can easily be acquired for very cheap, which of course means high school and college kids are now the majority owners. This happens to most BMWs. They start very expensive, get cheaper after the warranty expires, and then 10 years later, higher mileage models with very expensive maintenance sell for very cheap and get neglected until they are junk. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of people at this time expect you to be a teenager listening to terrible music and cutting them off while revving the engine. I remember when I got my first E92 in 2011, and it felt completely different. I also got a lot more respect on the road while driving. Lastly, let's combine our fifth love and hate into one. I'm conflicted on this one, as I feel like this car is at the same time dated and modern. Even though my example here is 12 years old, it's modern enough to where I can install wireless Apple CarPlay and feel like I'm driving a more modern vehicle with all of the benefits of having an older car, as I've mentioned so far in the video. Of course, the screen size and resolution are not that of modern BMWs, but you still have the same iDrive controller and buttons you have on newer ones, and most of the functionality as well. While the aftermarket CarPlay and the reversing camera help a lot, the rest is not very advanced. There's no smart features. You can't, connect to it from your phone remotely. You can't remote start it. All of these simple things that we take for granted now. But what you do get is a luxurious interior that isn't present on many modern BMWs at the same level. Everything is driver focused with a user-friendly interface that has no distractions, and you have actual physical buttons. You can do everything with a button here. So in the winter when you're driving, wearing gloves or whatever, you can easily do whatever you need to do, and I just love that. The ergonomics are just better than most modern cars that I've driven in the last few years. Well guys, that's just what I think. Do you agree with my take on this soon-to-be classic BMW? What are your thoughts? Is it worth potential headaches in the future? Is the cool factor and performance good enough in the modern world? Let me know down below in the comments. These are becoming super cheap, but I really hope someone will preserve quite a few of these nice examples, as this BMW E92 strikes the perfect balance between a sporty two-door coupe and a practical daily driver. It's a car that fits your lifestyle, whether you're hitting the track or running errands. This was also the best time period for the signature kidney grills, in my opinion. Not too small and definitely nothing like the current model. So it's a head turner for all the right reasons. It's a classic beauty that will stand the test of time, and in my opinion, prime BMW design. Click here to see my journey with this BMW 335 E92 coupe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! I also wish the ducks weren't here.